So I had an unexpected, something unexpected happened, so I had to close out, I had to end the first part of our PowerPoint. So now I have an extra part. This is part 2, and so the SPSS part will be part 3. So sorry about that. So let's go ahead and continue where I left off. We were talking about the surveying 145 people. These people are telling us what their favorite fruit is. So here is our table showing everyone's favorite fruit. For example, 35 people all feel that apples, they all believe that apples is their favorite fruit. And here is the bar graph. Again, we can get a great visual representation. We can easily see that for this group of people, blueberries is the most favorite, is the most popular, okay? And grapes is the least popular. Let's look at this example here for student grades. Let's say that in a recent test, students received the following grades. So we had 4 students received an A on this particular test, 12 students received a B, 10 students received a C, and 2 students received a D. Now, let's look at the bar graph for this. So again, we can easily see that most of our students received B's. So actually most of our students received grades of a B or a C. And again, only 2 students received a D. So when do we use histograms, and how do we know when to use histograms and when to use bar charts? So bar charts are good when your data are in categories. For instance, males. How many, when you're looking at categories, males and females, again, just like our examples, our test data, students received A, B, C, or D, or our first example, we were looking at people's favorite movies. So again, remember that categorical data we're looking at, it's not numbers, it's just they're falling into different categories, and from there, how many people fall within each category. Now, histograms are going to be used with our continuous data, with our numerical data. For instance, a person's height. If you are comparing, if you're looking to see where, how many people, if you're measuring 50 people's heights and you're wanting to graph that, you're wanting to see how many people are shorter, how many people are taller, how many people kind of fall in the middle. That's our continuous data. So when you are creating a bar chart, though, make sure you do not leave gaps between the bars of the bar chart so it doesn't look like a histogram. And I don't think that you have anything to worry with SPSS for this. Just something if you're using another software or if you're creating it by hand for some reason, SPSS by default it will make sure it will always leave gaps between the bars of a bar chart. So, meaning, again, there should be a space here, there should be gaps here for a bar chart or a bar graph. Remember, it's the same thing. And then for our histogram, there's no gaps, because if we do put gaps here between our bars, someone might think that it is a histogram. There would definitely be some confusion there, especially when it might look like a histogram, but there's categories here. Someone who understands graphs might realize, oh, there's a contradiction here. So make sure that there's no gaps. And again, your bar charts, here are categories. For instance, our categories here are our different countries. And histograms would be our continuous data, our number ranges here. Our last graph that we're going to look at is a scatter plot. So a scatter plot is a graph of plotted points that show the relationship between two sets of data. So in this example, each dot represents one person's weight versus their height. So if I would look at this particular data point, this represents one person here in the sample, and so this person's weight falls here, and this person's height falls here. Okay? And so the same for everyone. So for each dot that is represented, it's their weight versus their height, where it falls on the spectrum. And notice how these dots kind of fall into a line. It's not a perfect line, but there is some sort of a line here. It is a little linear, and so we're going to talk about this later in the semester when we look at correlations, where we look at the relationship between two variables. And whenever there is a linear relationship, when your dots fall into a line, the straighter that line is, the stronger that relationship is. So again, we're going to look at that further into the semester, but just to kind of get you thinking about that relationship between two variables. And let's look at this particular example. So for instance, the local ice cream shop keeps track of how much ice cream they sell versus the noon temperature on that day. Let's look at their figures for the last 12 days. So ice cream sales versus temperature. Here's the temperature versus the ice cream sales here. And by looking at this table, it's hard to see what type of relationship there is, if any, between these two variables. But let's look at it on a scatter plot. So here's the same data as a scatter plot. So notice that as the temperature gets warmer, the ice cream sales get higher. So warmer weather leads to more sales. Okay, but the relationship is not perfect here. Okay, it's not a perfect line, but there is some sort of relationship. See how it is linear. So easy to see that warmer weather, that there's a relationship here between warmer weather and ice cream sales. This is the end of class lecture part 2. Again, I apologize that I had to stop the first part unexpectedly, but we will, in part 3, we will look at SPSS.